Good day everyone, this is the group 2 and we will be going to report about the working capital management. In here, we will be going to discuss about its definitions, about working capital variability, cash management, credit management, receivables management, inventory management, working capital metrics, and other key takeaways. And of course, before we proceed to the reports, allow me to introduce our group members. We have Miss Yusel Avergas, Miss Jessa Orbita, Mr. Ernesto Geliado, Miss Irene Bulanon, Miss Marianne Arador, Mr. Jesus Roque, and Miss Victoria Decker. So let we have this overview of the topic. The definitions of working capital management, how it functions. So, the treasurer typically looks to debt or stock issues when a firm needs more money. However, if these conventional funding sources are too expensive, the treasurer should consider freeing up funds locked up in working capital. Even though managing working capital requires a lot of tactical labor regularly, the process can be fruitful if it produces a sizable cash flow. So, as it is written here, working capital management is the collection of tasks carried out by an organization to ensure that it has adequate funds to cover its regular operational costs. So, working capital management also, it is the managing supplier payments, receivables, and inventories to optimize the investment in working capital. The possible amount of cash that can be taken out of a company's working capital is demonstrated in the example in the next slides. The following sections first highlight how variations in corporate sales volume tend to affect working capital. Then it will be also discuss the important management facets of each working capital component that might affect the degree of money allocated to working capital. So there is another one here that we should remember. Working capital management seeks to reduce the cost of money spent on working capital. It also optimizes the return on assets investments and ensure the business has enough cash to pay its debts and obligations. Let's proceed to the next reporter about working capital variability.
This is Jushel Avergas and I will be going to discuss you about working capital variability. Working capital variability refers to the degree of fluctuation or changes in companies' working capital over a certain period. Ipinapakita nito kung gaano kalaki ang pagbabago sa working capital o ang pagkakaiba sa pagitan ng mga current assets and current liabilities. Dahil sa mga factors tulad ng mga seasonal sales patterns, inventory management, or shifts in accounts receivable and payable. High variability can indicate instability in a firm's liquidity, making it difficult to predict cash flows, while low variability suggests more consistent and predictable cash flow management. Working capital is defined as a company's current assets minus its current liabilities, while there are a number of minor asset and liability categories that can be included in this definition. The primary components of working capital are cash, accounts receivable or mga natatanggap na account, inventory, and accounts payable or mga bayarin. All of these components tend to vary in proportion to the level of sales but not at the same time. For example, kung ang isang kumpanya ay nakakaranas ng high seasonal sales in its fourth quarter, Then, inventories and accounts payable ay malamang natataas bago magsimula ang pangunahing panahon ng pagbebenta, while accounts receivable ay tataas sa fourth quarter and mananatiling mataas hanggang sa early part ng first quarter ng susunod na taon. Cash will decline before the key sales season in order to pay for inventories and will increase as receivables are collected. So, magiging pinakamataas ang levels ng pera pagkatapos ng prime selling season. Kung ang kumpanya ay hindi kumikita, ang levels ng pera ay hindi babalik pagkatapos ng prime selling season, ngunit mananatiling mababa. And here's what working capital variability can indicate. First is operational changes. If a company experiences changes in production, sales, or procurement, its working capital can vary. For example, ang mas mataas na benta ay maaaring magdulot ng pagtaas ng mga utang ng mga kliyente or accounts receivable, habang ang mabagal na benta ay maaaring magpababa ng bilis ng paggalaw ng inventory. Next is cash flow fluctuations. Ito ang mga pagbabago sa bilis ng pagkolekta ng kumpanya ng mga utang mula sa mga customer or pay its suppliers can lead to variability in cash flow, impacting the overall working capital. Next is seasonality. Ito ang mga kumpanya sa mga industries na may seasonal sales ay kadalasang nakakakita ng pagbabago-bago sa working capital dahil sa mga pagtaas at pagbaba ng demand, inventory build-up or slowdowns during off-seasons. And last is risk management. Higher variability in working capital could signal that the company is less consistent in managing its short-term assets and liabilities, na posibleng magdulot ng mas mataas na financial risk.
I have 5 examples. First, a company might forecast cash flow for the next 6 months to plan for seasonal variations in sales and expenses. Second, a retail business might keep a reserve of cash to cover payroll and supplier payments during slow sales period. Third, a business might invest surplus funds in short-term instruments like treasury bills or money market funds to earn interest while keeping funds accessible. Fourth, a company might use electronic invoicing and payment systems to speed up collections and take advantage of early payment discounts for payables. Lastly, a business might establish procedures for reconciling cash registers and conducting regular audits. By focusing on these areas, businesses can improve their financial health, reduce costs, and support growth initiatives.
Credit management involves different tasks such as credit evaluation, credit condition and terms, credit tracking, collection of debt, credit risk management, reporting, and analysis. What can be said to be credit assessment is the process of evaluating the ability to repay the amount borrowed, while the risk assessed involves lending. The expected payment period and interest rates and fees are defined by payment condition and terms. Credit monitoring refers to the method of ensuring timely payment through keeping track of accounts and setting credit limits to prevent overextension. Debit collection consists of reminders and a methodical recovery process. Credit risk management ensures minimizing loss and bad credit management. Financial report updates finance book, and credit policy analysis takes place with regards to business needs and customers' behavior. Good credit management balances the increment of sales with the risk non-payment to ensure financial health of a company. The above all assure financial stability, save more money on paid interest, and reduce stress level, avoiding overstretching oneself, speedy resolution of the dispute, having an emergency fund, and checking regularly is fundamental. Considering all these features would facilitate increasing the credit score by enabling good financial opportunities for one's future without much stress.
Hi everyone, my name is Irene B. Bulanan. My topic is receivables management. Once credit has been granted to a customer's responsibility for billing and collecting from the customer usually passes to the accounting department. The ability of accounting staff to reliably invoice and collect in a timely manner has a major impact on the amount of a working capital invested in account receivable. The treasurer does not have direct control over this function, but should be aware of the following factors, which can seriously extend customers' payment intervals unless carefully managed. The first is invoicing delay. Invoices should be issued immediately after the related goods and services has been provided. If the accounting staff is billing only in stated intervals, then receivables are being extended just because an internal accounting work policies. The next is invoicing errors. If invoices are being continually reissued due to the errors, then additional control are needed to increase the accuracy of initial invoices. This can be a serious issue since invoicing errors are usually found by the customer, which may be several weeks after they are originally issued. The next is invoice transmission. There is a multi-day mailing delay when invoices are delivered through the postal service. Instead, the accounting system should be configured to issue invoices by email or electronic data interchange, or the accounting staff should be manually email invoices. And the next slide is lockbox receipt. Of check or receive at the company location and then sent to the bank. This creates a delay of potentially several days before the check are processed, internally deposited, and then cleared the bank. Instead, customers should send all check to the lockbox so that check are deposited in the minimum amount of time, thereby increasing the ability of fine. The next is collection management. There should be a well-trained collection staff that assign responsibility for specific accounts, focuses on the largest overdue account balances first, begin to run a customer immediately after payment due date are reached, and is supported by collection software system. The group should be use a broad array of collection techniques including dunning letters, on-site visits, attorney letters, payment commitment letters, create hold, and collection agencies. The next slide is internal error follow-up. If payment are being delayed due service from the company or product flows, the collection staff should have tracking system in place that store the details of this problem, and the accounting manager should follow up with managers elsewhere in the company to have them resolved. The treasurer can be periodically inquire of the controller if these collections issues are being managed properly. Another approach is to obtain an accounts receivable aging report and determine the reason why overdue receivables have not yet been paid. At a minimum, The treasurer should track these receivables outstanding on the timeline and the follow-up with the controller of a chief financial officer if their metric increases over time.
Inventory management. Of all the components of working capital, inventory management is the most critical because it is the least liquid and therefore tends to be a cash trap. Once funds have been spent on inventory, the time period required to convert it back into cash can be quite long. So it is extremely important to invest in the smallest possible amount of inventory. Inventory purchasing. When the purchasing department orders inventory from suppliers, it asks them for the lead time they need to deliver orders and then create a safety stock level to at least match the lead time. The treasurer should be aware that extremely distant foreign sourcing such as to Asia will drastically lengthen lead times and therefore the amount of safety stock. Conversely, if a company can source its inventory needs from suppliers located ever close to the company and work with them to reduce their lead times and increase the frequency of their deliveries, this results in lowered safety stocks and therefore a reduced need for funding. Another contributor to long lead times is the manual processing of purchase order to suppliers. If inventory needs are calculated by hand, then transferred to a purchase order, manually approved, and delivered by mail, then a company must retain more safety stock to cover for this additional delay. The purchasing department orders inventory based on its estimates of what customers are going to buy. No matter how sophisticated, these estimates are bound to be incorrect to some extent, resulting in the purchase of excess inventory. For example, if a supplier says that it needs 2 weeks to deliver goods and the company uses $100,000 of its inventory per week, then the purchasing department creates a safety stock level of at least $200,000 to keep the company running while it waits for the next deliver. This lead time therefore requires $200,000 of funding. Inventory receiving. The receiving stock procedures can have an impact on inventory-related funding. For example, a supplier may ship goods without an authorizing purchase of order from the company. If the receiving stock accepts the delivery, then the company is obligated to pay for it. A better practice is to reject all inbound deliveries that do not have a purchase order authorization. Another procedural issue is to require the immediate entry of all receiving information into the company's warehouse management system. If this is not done, the risk increases that the receipt will never be recorded due to loss or misplaced paperwork. The purchasing staff will see the inventory never arrive and may order additional goods to compensate, which requires more funding. Inventory storage. In traditional system, inventory arrives from suppliers, is stored in the company warehouse, and is shipped when ordered by customers. The company is funding the inventory for as long as it sits in the warehouse waiting for a customer order. A better method is to avoid the warehouse entirely by using drop shipping. Another option that severely reduces the amount of inventory retention time is cross-docking. Under cross-docking, when an item arrives at the receiving dock, it is immediately moved to a shipping dock for delivery to the customer in a different truck. There is no put-away or picking transaction and no long-term storage, which also reduces the risk of damage to the inventory. Cross-docking only works when there is excellent control over the timing of inbound deliveries, so the warehouse management system knows when items will arrive. It also requires multiple extra loading docks, since trailer may have to be kept on site longer than normal while loads are accumulated from several inbound deliveries. Production issues impacting inventory. The production process is driven by several procedural, policy, and setup issues that strongly impact the amount of inventory and therefore at the level of funding. To reduce the funding requirement of this excess inventory, a company should produce the demand, which is exemplified by the just-in-time or known as JIT manufacturing system. A GIT system triggers an authorization to produce only if an order is received from my customer. So there is never any excess inventory on hand, though a GIT system initially appears to generate higher per unit costs. The unlimited carrying cost of inventory make it considerably less expensive. And from the treasurer's perspective, a GIT system can release a great deal of cash from inventory. Another production issue is to avoid volume-based incentive-based system. Some companies pay the employees more if they produce more. Not only does result in extremely high levels of inventory, but this pay system tend to yield lower quality goods, since employee favor higher volume over higher quality. If the plans is derived from a GIT system, then employees are producing only too much existing customer orders, which keep funding requirements low. A related issue in the use of complex, high-capacity machinery, industrial engineering enjoy this machine because they feature impressively high throughput rates. However, they also require immense production volumes in order to justify their initial and ongoing maintenance costs, which once again result in the accumulation of too much inventory. Instead, the treasury should favor the acquisition of smaller, simpler machine having lower maintenance costs. Such machine can be operated profitably with very small production runs, thereby making it easier to drive down inventory levels. A simple method for reducing work in process inventory is to use smaller container sizes.
Good day everyone, I'm the next reporter, Mary Ann Eunice Arador. So the continuation of the discussion is the Bill of Materials. A Bill of Materials is a detailed list of the materials, components, and parts needed to construct a product. It is like a recipe for a product, parang chef na kailangan malaman kung gaano karami ang ingredients para hindi magkulang o masobrahan ang putahe. Ganon din sa companies. They use Bill of Materials para malaman kung gaano karaming materials ang o-orderin. Kapag hindi tama ang estimate, baka magkulang ng materials or sobra-sobra naman at masayang. The Bill of Materials role in inventory reduction is the accurate inventory management through BOM audits. Regular checks ensure the materials ordered match what's actually needed. Chine-check nila kung match ang materials na na-order sa actual na kailangan. Kapag accurate to, companies avoid overstocking or understocking. Number 2 is scrap estimation in the BOM. The BOM also includes an estimate for material that might be wasted. Kasi hindi lahat ng materials na ginagamit ay totally magagamit. For example, kung magpuputol ka ng tela for clothes, may mga tira-tirang pieces yon. And yun yung tinatawag na scrap. So when it is included sa BOM, mas madaling ma-estimate kung ilang materials talaga ang kailangan. Kasama na yung mga may iwan. Number 3 is engineering change orders and part substitution. The engineering change orders track product design modifications that necessitate different parts or materials. For example, kung nagpalit ng type ng plastic or metal na ginagamit, i-update nila yung BOM. It is important para maiwasan na mag-stock pa rin ng old materials na hindi na gagamitin. It's like kapag may bagong recipe ka, hindi mo na kailangang bumili ng old ingredients. So, in short, the Bill of Materials is super important in ensuring that a company doesn't overspend or waste resources. It's like making sure you don't waste money sa materials para sakto lang yung lahat. Next is product design. Product design refers to the process of developing a new product for a business to sell it to the customers. So, basically, it is the process of creating a new product na ibebenta ng company sa mga customers. Parang kapag nagde-design ka ng bagong phone or gadget, kailangan mong siguraduhin na maganda siya para sa customers. Pero at the same time, madali at kaya din siyang gawin ng company. So, for example, kung ang company gagawa ng bagong phone, kailangan nilang i-check kung available ba yung materials like glass or metal at kung pasok ba sa budget nila yung design. So, product design isn't just about making something cool. It's also about making sure na practical siya for the company to produce and sell. Product design and its impact on the inventory are, number 1 is the number of product options. Product options refer to the variations or features that a company offers within a product line, such as different sizes, colors, or configurations. So, kapag nag-offer ang company ng maraming product options, like different sizes or colors for the same product, it also means na kailangan nilang mag-stock ng extra inventory for each version. Example, kung may iba't ibang kulay or sizes ang phone, kailangan ng extra stock para sa bawat isa. So, ang epekto nito ay tataas ang inventory cost. Number 2 is number of products offered. This refers to the overall variety of different products a company manufactures or sells. A company that sells many different products has to keep even more inventory. If some products don't sell, the company could end up with too much unused stock. Kapag maraming iba't ibang produkto ang company, like a toy store selling 20 different types of toys, kailangan nilang mag-keep ng stock for each product. Paano kung yung ibang products hindi mabenta? E di magiging result nito ay ang pagsobra ng stock na nasa storage lang. Gaya ng toy store na may 20 types of toys, pero 10 or 10 lang yung pumatok, yung ibang toys ay nagiging dagdag gastos lang dahil nakatambak sila sa warehouse. So, to sum it up, product design doesn't just affect how customers see a product, pero malaking impact din siya sa inventory. Kapag marami kang options or products, kailangan mo ng mas maraming inventory. At kapag dinabenta, dagdag lang to sa gastos. Next is customer service. Great customer service stems from your ability to balance the demand and supply of products, which means your suppliers must have the most current information about product demand. It's all about making customers happy. Isa sa mga paraan para masatisfy sila ay siguraduhin may sapat na stock ng products. For example, kung may store ka na nagbebenta ng t-shirts, dapat may sapat ka ring inventory para kapag may bumili, ready ka agad mag-deliver ng produkto mo. Pero imagine kung lagi kang may 1,000 t-shirts in stock pero 500 pieces lang ang nabebenta kada buwan, yung extra 500 t-shirts nakatambak lang at worst magiging outdated na ang style bago pa maibenta. So, there are customer service objectives that we should practice. To meet customer demand and prevent stockouts. Make sure customers are happy. Companies try to avoid running out of stock by keeping a large inventory of finished products. This ensures that when a customer places an order, the product is ready to be delivered without delay. Halimbawa, in an online store, importante na may sapat silang stocks para hindi maghintay ng matagal ang customers. Kapag satisfied sila sa bilis ng service, they are most likely to become a loyal customers, and pwede pa nila ito ma-recommend sa iba. Second is maintaining a high inventory level. It comes with significant costs such as storage, handling, and potential obsolescence. However, may downside sa pag-keep ng sobrang daming inventory. The more stock na nakastore, mas malaki rin ang gastos para sa storage, handling, at protection ng mga products. May risk din na ang ibang items ay maaari maging outdated o hindi na mabenta. Think about a company selling smartphones. Kung marami silang na-stock na isang model at kalaunan may lumabas na bagong version, mahihirapan na silang ibenta yung lumang model. So, the third one is balancing customer service and inventory costs. So, ang challenge ay paano babalansehin ang customer at inventory costs. Regular na nire-review ng companies ang kanilang inventory strategy. They articulate kung kailangan pa talagang mag-keep ng high inventory levels o kaya bang bawasan ang stock habang sinisigurado masusupply pa rin ang customer demand. Dito nila binabalanse ang cost ng pag-maintain ng inventory versus the benefits of having products available all the time. While it's good to have enough stock to avoid running out, yes, kailangan natin ng sapat na stock to avoid running out. Pero hindi rin pwedeng sobra-sobra dahil mas mataas ang storage cost at risk sa mga magiging outdated ang products. Next is inventory disposition. Inventory disposition determines how businesses handle surplus, outdated, or returned items. It involves reintegrating, selling, recycling, donating, or discarding these products. Madalas, companies end up with extra inventory na hindi na nila nagagamit or maibebenta. Ito yung tinatawag na obsolete inventory at kailangan nilang mag-decide kung ano ang proseso na gagawin dito. To have this process working, meron silang Materials Review Board, which includes team members from Materials Management, Engineering, and Accounting departments. Their job is to look at all the old or obsolete inventory. So, ayun nga, obsolete means something that is no longer in use or outdated na. So, a company has to figure out what to do with it. They assess kung pwede pa bang magamit o kailangan na nilang itapon o ibenta. So, the goal is to find the most cost-effective way na makahandle ang excess inventory. Let's say a factory has leftover parts from an old model of a machine that they no longer produce. The Materials Review Board will decide kung magagamit pa ba ang parts sa mga bagong models or pwedeng ibenta ang spare parts o kailangan ng itapon. So, the second is utilizing obsolete inventory internally. Sometimes, inventory that's considered obsolete can still be used for other purposes within the company. Instead of just throwing it away or letting it take up space sa warehouse, ginagamit nila yung materials sa ibang products or as a spare parts. Nakakatulong ito para ma-reduce ang cost ng pagpili ng bagong products. For example, a car manufacturer may have spare doors from an old car model that is no longer in production. Instead of scrapping those doors, pwede nila itong gamitin for repairs or renovation. Malaking tipid yan for the company kasi hindi na nila kailangan bumili ng bagong parts. So, when things are totally useless, these disposition options are for them. One is return to suppliers. If allowed, the company can return the excess stock to the supplier and pay a small fee. Second is sell to salvage constructors. This means selling unused items to contractors who might repurpose them. Third is donation for tax credit. Another option is donating extra stock to charities. Bukod sa mababawasan ng warehouse space, makakakuha din ang company ng tax benefit. So, it's a win-win for both. O kaya, pwede rin po for internal use. Sometimes, obsolete inventory can be used for different purposes within the company. Example, a company that has extra fabric that can use to make smaller products like bags or accessories. So, in some cases, disposing of inventory by throwing it away may be the most practical option. Retaining obsolete inventory consumes valuable warehouse space, which incurs ongoing costs. It's all about finding smart ways to handle extra or outdated inventory na either magagamit pa, may ibebenta, or madodonate and at the same time makakatipid ang company. Next is payables management. Account payable management monitors the expenses that a company owes to its vendor and suppliers. We all know na hindi lang puro profit or pagbebenta ang isang business. Kailangan din itong bayaran ang mga suppliers on time. And that's the role of payables management. Para matrack kung ano ang utang ng company sa mga suppliers at masiguradong nababayaran sila sa tamang oras. Example, if you run a restaurant, you buy ingredients from a supplier. And of course, it's important na maayos ang payment mo sa supplier para tuloy-tuloy rin ang pag-supply nito sa business mo. Para na rin hindi magkaroon ng conflict dahil sa late payment. The key departments involved are Accounting Department and Purchasing Department. Accounting Department handles processing payments. It's the bills the company owes. Basically, inaalam nila kung magkano ang bills na kailangan bayaran ng company. They make sure that these bills are paid accurately and on time. Purchasing Department. They set the payment terms with suppliers. For example, sasabihin nila kung kailan babayaran ang supplier. Kung after 30 days or 60 days ba, depende yun sa napag-usapan. So, this makes sure that the company pay its bills on time. It maintains good supplier relationships and keeps the business running smoothly. Kaya napaka-importante nito sa overall health ng isang negosyo. Next is payment terms. Payment terms are the conditions and parameters of payment for an item or service. It is set by the seller for the customer. It refers to the conditions na sinet ng seller para malaman kung kailan at paano babayaran ng buyer ang isang product or service. Kasama na dito kung pwede magbayad in installments, by credit, or in cash, also kung may interest charges at hanggang kailan dapat matapos ang payment. There are key considerations on payment terms in supplier negotiations. Number 1 is extended payment terms. They give the company more time to settle its account with suppliers, such as 60 or 90 days instead of the typical 30 days. Means, mas mahaba ang time bago kailangan bayaran ang supplier. Example, kung bumili ang company ng materials pero kailangan lang nila magbayad after 90 days. Favorable dahil may oras ang company na ibenta muna ang products at i-gain ang kita nito bago sila magbayad. Second one is shorter payment terms. Some suppliers, particularly large and powerful ones, may demand shorter payment terms or even cash in advance. On the other hand, may mga suppliers naman, especially yung mga malalaking companies, na gusto short payment terms o minsan cash in advance pa. So bakit? Kasi mataas ang demand sa product nila at ayaw nilang mag-take ng risk na hintayin pa ang payment under any circumstances. For example, kung bibili ka sa isang major tech company, baka mag-demand sila na magbayad ka agad dahil alam nilang in demand yung product nila. In negotiating payment terms, kailangan ang balance approach. Dapat goods ang relationship mo sa supplier pero at the same time, kailangan efficient din ang pag-manage ng cash flow. This balance is the key para mapanatiling healthy ang negosyo. Next is payment processing. It refers to the handling and facilitating of financial transactions between a customer and a business. It involves the authorization, authentication, and settlement of payments for goods or services. This is the process na ginagawa para mag-handle ng financial transactions between a customer and a business. Ito yung steps na tinitignan kung valid ba ang payment, paano ito i-secure, at kung paano ito masasettle. Companies often pay suppliers at set intervals such as weekly. Isa sa mga bagay ito na kailangan bantayan ng business kung kailan sila nagbabayad sa suppliers. Most companies may set payment schedules, halimbawa every week. Pero kapag nagbayad sila ng maaga bago ang due date, maaaring maapektuhan ang available cash nila, which means mababawasan ang fund nila para sa iba pang important expenses, like pagbayad ng salaries or pagbili ng bagong materials. Example, a company na lagi nagbabayad ng bills every Friday. Kung maaga sila nagbayad ng sobra, baka maubos agad ang cash nila at wala nang matira para sa ibang gastusin ng business. So, kailangan nilang maging maingat sa pag-manage ng payment schedules para siguradong enough pa rin ang cash flow nila. By aligning payment schedules with the company's cash flow needs, businesses can save on costs and avoid liquidity issues. Ang ibig sabihin nito, mas nakakasave ang company at mas stable financially at mahalaga ang tamang timing sa pagbayad para hindi maubos ang funds na pwedeng gamitin sa ibang operational needs. Lastly is intercompany netting. It is a process that simplifies and reduces the volume of transactions between different entities within a corporation. It involves offsetting receivables and payables to create a single net amount to be paid or received. So kung maraming branches o subsidiaries ang isang malaking company, madalas nagkakabayaran sila ng iba't ibang amounts. So ano ba yung subsidiary? Sila yung may parent company. Basically, pag-aari o kontrolado ni parent company si subsidiary. Kasi hawak niya yung higit 50% ng shares ng company. So ayun nga, para hindi hassle, imbis na magbayad sila ng bawat utang ng paisa-isa, pinagsasama-sama na nila yung mga utang, which is yung mga receivables and payables ng company, at inaayos na lang yung net amount o yung kabuuang balance. So, ganun po yung nangyayari sa netting payments. Instead of handling each payment separately, the subsidiaries transactions can be netted out. For example po, ako po ay may utang kay Abergas na 1,000 pesos, and si Abergas naman ay may utang din sa akin na 800 pesos. Imbis na magbayaran kami ng hiwalay, isasettle na lang namin yung difference. So, ako po magbabayad na lang ng 200 pesos kasi yun na lang yung balance after ibawas yung 800 na utang sa akin ni Abergas. So, intercompany nettings is less hassle dahil mas kaunti yung payment, mas simple ang accounting at hindi na magulo yung mga bayaran sa pagitan ng mga subsidiaries.
Let's proceed to the working capital metrics. Yung usual na alam natin, ito yung the difference between a company's current assets and current liabilities. But this section pala contains 4 metrics for working capital. I-discuss dito kung ano yung ginagamit ng treasurer to form an opinion regarding the amounts of receivables, inventory, and payables a company is maintaining. So these metrics have no right or wrong results and since they are tied to a company's policies for granting credit, order fulfillment, and so on. The treasurer should track these metrics on a trend line to see if working capital levels change. The same trend line will reveal the results of the working capital improvement tactics noted earlier in this chapter. Now, proceed po tayo dun sa unang metrics, which is the average receivable collection period. The average number of days that accounts receivable remain unpaid is expressed by this figure. When this format is contrasted with the typical number of days that consumers are given credit for, it becomes especially helpful. For example, if the standard days are 60 and the average collecting period is, if the credit limit is 30, then clients are paying their bills far too slowly. When the average time to collect accounts receivable is only a few days longer than the typical days of credit, this is a sign of good performance. To calculate the average receivable collection period, we have here the formula, which is divide the annual credit sales by 365 days and divide the result into average accounts receivables. So, bakit nga ba natin ginagamit itong figures na to? The main issue is with this calculation is what figure to use for annual sales. No, if the total sales for the year are used, this may result in a skewed measurement since the sales associated with the current outstanding accounts receivables may be significantly higher or lower than the average level of sales represented by the annual sales figure. This problem especially common when sales are high seasonal. A better approach is to annualize the sale figures for the period covered by the bulk of the existing accounts receivable. Now, let's proceed to the second metrics, which is the inventory turnover. Inventory is frequently the largest component of a company's working capital. In such situations, if inventory is not being used up by operations at a reasonable pace, then a company has invested a large part of its cash in an asset that may be difficult to liquidate in short order. So, kapag walang inventory ang isang organization or ang isang company or business, mahirapan na matukoy sa pag-liquidate ng mga assets. So, accordingly, keeping close track of the rate of inventory turnover is a necessary function of a management. There are several variations on the inventory turnover measurement, which may be combined to yield the most complete turnover reporting for management to peruse. In all cases, these measurements should be tracked on a trend line to see if there are gradual reductions in the rate of turnover, which can indicate to management that corrective action is required to eliminate excess inventory stocks. Kahit saan ginagamit tong inventory pag sa mga businesses, kahit nga sa mga sari-sari store, importante to. Example ko na lang sa amin, hindi lang sa amin kasi since ang pinoproduce kasi ng company namin is yung yun nga, civil service, yung serbisyo sa mga tao, mga pabahay. So, pati yung mga beneficiaries namin, naka-inventaryo yan kung ilan sila, sino-sino sila. Tas kung saan yung mga lugar ng mga projects, naka-inventaryo yan. Yung usual, syempre sa amin sa admin, ang ini-inventaryo namin yung mga supplies. So, in charge din ako sa purchasing, sa procurement. So, every time na nagpo-procure ako ng mga common office supplies and equipments, meron kaming report. Dapat sinushow namin kung ilan na yung materials, kung ilan na yung materials level namin, yung quantities, Importante yon. And also, we're using the system which is the property inventory management system kung saan nakalagay yung bawat ICT equipments, mga furnitures and fixtures. So, doon namin ilalagay kung kani-kanino naka-assign yung mga properties na yon. So, mahalaga tong inventory. So, now let's proceed to the simplest turnover calculation, which is to divide the period end inventory into the annualized cost of sales. One can also use an average inventory figure in the denominator, which avoids sudden changes in the inventory level that are likely to occur on any specific period and date. So the formula, as we can see, is the cost of goods sold divided by the inventory. Ito yung simplest form. So there is another one, a variation on the preceding formula, is to divide it into 365 days, which yields the number of days of inventory on hand. This may be more understandable to the layman. For example, 43 days of inventory is more clear than 8.5 inventory turns, even though they represent the same situation. So the formula, as we can see, is here 365 days divided by the cost of goods sold and divided by it also in inventory. The preceding two formulas use the entire cost of goods sold in the numerator, which includes direct labor, direct materials, and overhead. However, only direct materials cost directly relate to the level of raw materials inventory. Consequently, a cleaner relationship to compare the value of direct materials expense to raw materials inventory, yielding a raw materials turnover figure. This measurement can also be divided into 365 days to yield the number of days of raw materials on hand. So, kaya merong another formula dito, no? Which is the direct materials expense over the raw materials inventory. Ginagamit to dun sa mga direct materials cost kasi directly relate siya sa level ng mga raw materials na ginagamit. The preceding formula does not yield as clean a relationship between direct materials expense and work in process of finished goods. Since these two categories of inventory also include cost allocations for direct labor and overhead. However, if this added cost can be stripped out of the work in process and finished goods valuations, then there are reasonable grounds for comparing them to the direct materials expense as a valid ratio. Now let's proceed to the third metrics, which is the accounts payable days. A calculation of the accounts payable days gives a fair indication of a company's ability to pay its bills on time. If the accounts payable days are inordinately long, this is probably a sign that the company does not have sufficient cash flow to pay its bills. Alternatively, a small amount of accounts payable days indicates that a company is either taking advantage of early payment discounts or is simply paying its bills earlier than it has to. The calculation of this is to divide the total annualized purchases by 360 days, and then divide the result into the ending accounts payable balance. An alternative approach is to use the average accounts payable for the reporting period, since the ending figure may be disproportionately high or low. The amount of purchases should be derived from all non-payroll expenses, expenses incurred during the year. Tandaan po natin, so yung payroll po is not included because it is not a part of accounts payable listed in the numerator. Depreciation and amortization should be excluded from the purchases figure since they do not involve cash payments. So, yung formula po nito, as we can see, is accounts payable divided by the purchases and divided in 360 days. The formula's most challenging component is determine how much is spent annually. Estimating the number of purchases might be challenging if a company experiences inconsistent business flow over a year. Since these transactions are directly reflected in the accounts payable in the numerator, annualizing the number of purchases for the last month or two will provide the most accurate comparison to the current level of accounts payable. So, let's remember this. This financial ratio illustrates how long it typically takes a company to pay its suppliers over a given period of time. The ideal average payment period is to be around 90 days. And now, here is the last metrics, which is the days of working capital. This working capital describes how many days it takes for a company to convert its working capital into revenue. The more days a company has of working capital, the more time it takes to convert that working capital into sales. The higher the days working capital number, the less efficient a company is. A business can make a modest quantity of sales with a significant amount of working capital, which could be a better use of assets. In any component of working capital, including relatively tiny amounts of inventory or accounts receivables relative to sales, might need more efficient asset utilization. They are concerning accounts payable. Ito yung mga utang na bayarin. When plotted on a trend line, the days of working capital matrix serves as a useful gauge for alteration in the effective utilization of working capital. A long working capital days count denotes a very effective working capital utilization. To calculate the working capital, the days of working capital, the current balances of inventories and accounts receivables are added together, and accounts payable are subtracted to get days of working capital. Next, we will be going to divide the outcome by daily sales, like for example, the annual sales divided by 365. So, as it shows here, the formula, sabi, dun sa nabasa ko, yung good indication daw ng days of working capital, yung ratio daw is dapat between 1.5 or 2. So, don't forget this. The more days a company has of working capital, the more time it takes to convert that working capital into sales. Mas maraming days, mas maraming time. So, the higher the days working capital number, the less efficient is a company is. Kapag marami daw, kapag mas mataas daw yung araw na mako-compute dito using this formula, less efficient daw yung company. Now, let's proceed to the last part of our report, a brief summary and some key takeaways. One of the company's largest uses of cash is its working capital. Though the treasurer does not have direct control over many aspects of working capital, he or she should be aware of the multitude of internal policies, controls, and systems that in large part are responsible for changes in the size of working capital and which he may be able to influence. Of particular importance is a company's credit policy. A suddenly loosened credit policy can spark a rapid increase in the amount of working capital. Conversely, if a company needs cash in the short term, a well-managed tightening of the credit policy can provide the necessary funds. Inventory is the most dangerous component of working capital because it can build rapidly unless properly controlled, and it cannot be easy to convert back into cash. The treasurer should monitor all components of working capital on a trend line in comparison to the revenue levels and against industry benchmarks. If a company's investment in working capital appears disproportionately high, the treasurer should bring this to the attention of seniors management and recommend ways to reduce the investments. So here are the keys. Working capital management requires monitoring a company's assets and liabilities to maintain sufficient cash flow to meet its short-term operating costs and short-term debts obligations. Managing working capital primarily revolves around managing accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, and cash. Working capital management involves tracking various ratios, including the working capital ratio, the collection ratio, and the inventory ratio. Working capital management can improve a company's cash flow management and earnings quality by using its resources efficiently. Lastly, a working capital management strategies may not materialize due to market fluctuations or may sacrifice long-term successes for short-term benefits. That's all. Thank you po.